Commander Vexthal stepped off the transport shuttle onto human-controlled space station Aurora 7. His armored exoskeleton gleamed under the bright artificial lights. At 8 feet tall with razor-sharp mandibles and 4 powerful arms, he cut an imposing figure among the smaller beings moving through the docking bay. Behind him, centuries of Kryn warrior tradition stood like an invisible monument. His people had conquered 17 star systems through sheer martial prowess. They were the galaxy's most feared warriors, and Vexthal wore that reputation like a badge of honor. He'd never been impressed by other species' military capabilities. Most galactic races relied on technology or numbers to compensate for their physical weaknesses. The Kryn needed neither. They were born warriors, bred for combat, trained from childhood in the ancient arts of battle. Humans, though, they seemed particularly underwhelming. Vexthal had studied the files during his journey. Soft skin that tore easily. No natural armor, no claws, no venom, no enhanced strength. They weren't even particularly large. Average height around 6 feet, maybe 180 pounds. One good strike from a Kryn warrior could break a human in half. Yet somehow these fragile creatures had earned a seat on the Galactic Council. Somehow they'd established trade routes across 3 sectors. Somehow, other species treated them with a respect that Vexthal couldn't understand. It made no sense. He'd come here to discover what tricks they were using, what technology they were hiding behind. The assignment was straightforward enough. Shadow a human military unit during joint patrol exercises in the disputed Outer Rim territories. A diplomatic formality, nothing more. The Kryn Empire wanted to maintain good relations with the humans, even if Vexthal privately thought it was unnecessary. Still, orders were orders. A human male approached him with an easy smile and an extended hand. He was maybe 30 years old, with short brown hair and green eyes that crinkled at the corners. His uniform was neat but worn like it had seen real use. A patch on his shoulder read Sergeant Morrison. "Commander Vexthal, welcome aboard," the human said warmly. "Hope the trip wasn't too rough. Name's Jake Morrison. I'll be your host for the next few days." Vexthal clasped the human's hand carefully, hyper-aware that he could crush every bone in it without effort. The human's grip was firm but not aggressive. Professional. "It was adequate," Vexthal replied, his translator rendering his words in flat tones. Jake laughed, seemingly unbothered by the curt response. "Well, adequate's better than terrible, right? Come on, let me introduce you to the team." As they walked through the corridors of Aurora 7, Vexthal observed everything with a warrior's eye. The station was clean and well-maintained, but it lacked the martial grandeur of Kryn facilities. No weapons displays on the walls. No banners celebrating great victories. No statues of legendary warriors. Instead, there were information screens showing news feeds, directories to various sections, and something called a recreation schedule. They entered a ready room where 5 more humans waited. None of them stood at attention when their commander entered. None of them saluted. They were scattered around the room in casual poses that would have earned severe punishment in a Kryn military facility. A woman with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail was cleaning a rifle while humming something melodic. She looked up and smiled. "Hey Jake, this our guest. Commander Vexthal, meet Private First Class Amy Rodriguez," Jake said. "Best shot in the unit." Amy gave a little wave. "Nice to meet you, Commander. Hope you like long patrols and bad rations." 2 men in the corner were engaged in what appeared to be a heated debate. One was gesturing wildly while the other shook his head. "I'm telling you, Brian, there's no way the Patriots make the playoffs this year. Their defense is trash." "You said the same thing last year, Tyler, and look what happened," the other one countered. Jake cleared his throat. "Guys, we've got company. Commander, that's Corporal Brian Matthews and Lance Corporal Tyler Evans. They're discussing something called football, which you'll learn is basically a religion where they come from." Brian and Tyler both looked over and nodded. "Welcome aboard, Commander," they said in unison, then immediately returned to their argument. A woman with lieutenant's bars approached and extended her hand. She had blonde hair streaked with gray and sharp blue eyes that assessed Vexthal in one quick glance. "Lieutenant Rebecca Hayes, Commander. I'll be leading this patrol. Appreciate you joining us." Finally, a younger man with dark hair and glasses waved from where he was working at a computer terminal. "Specialist David Park, sir. I handle communications and sensors. Let me know if you need anything." Vexthal looked around the ready room, his confusion growing. This was a military unit? They showed no discipline, no rigid hierarchy, no martial bearing whatsoever. They treated their commanding officer like a friend rather than a superior. They were discussing sports and making jokes instead of preparing for combat. Is this? Vexthal paused, searching for diplomatic phrasing. Is this how human soldiers normally conduct themselves? Jake's smile widened. Yeah, pretty much. We're not big on formality when we're off duty. Saves the military discipline for when it actually matters. When it actually matters. Vexthal felt his mandibles click in disapproval. For the Kryn, discipline mattered always. Every moment was preparation for the next battle. Warriors maintained constant readiness, constant awareness. These humans seemed barely aware they were soldiers at all. Lieutenant Hayes pulled up a holographic display showing a star map. All right, let's get down to business. We're running a standard patrol through the asteroid belt, sectors 7 through 12. Intel suggests Talvek Reaver activity in the area. They've hit 3 merchant vessels in the past 2 weeks. The Talvek Reavers? Vexthal's interest perked up. The pirate clan that takes no prisoners? The ones who've been terrorizing this sector for 6 years. That's them, Jake confirmed, his tone as casual as if discussing the weather. We've dealt with them before. Vexthal noticed something odd then. For just a moment, something flickered across the humans' faces. Their casual expressions tightened slightly. Their eyes went flat and distant like windows shutting. Then just as quickly the friendly demeanor returned. It happened so fast that Vexthal almost thought he'd imagined it. We should expect heavy resistance, Vexthal said, leaning forward eagerly. The Reavers are brutal fighters. Heavily armed, no moral limitations, experienced in ship-to-ship combat. This will be a glorious battle. A true test of martial prowess. Jake exchanged glances with Amy. She shrugged, a small smile playing at her lips. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Commander. We'd rather bring everyone home without firing a shot. Vexthal couldn't hide his disdain. You hope to avoid battle? What kind of warriors are you? The kind that like being alive, Tyler said from the corner, not looking up from whatever he was working on. Glory's great and all, but it doesn't spend well when you're dead. Besides, Rebecca added, our job isn't to fight. It's to keep the shipping lanes safe. Fighting's just one tool in the toolbox and usually not the best one. Vexthal sat back, disappointment washing over him. These weren't warriors at all. They were. He didn't even know what to call them. Technicians? Bureaucrats in uniform? They talked about combat like it was an inconvenience, something to be avoided rather than embraced. As the briefing continued, Vexthal watched the humans prepare their equipment. They were thorough and professional, he had to admit that much. Every weapon was checked and double-checked. Every system was tested. They reviewed contingency plans and emergency protocols with careful attention to detail. But there was no passion in it. No fire. They might as well have been preparing for a routine delivery run. As they headed toward the docking bay where their patrol vessel waited, Vexthal overheard Brian and Tyler talking quietly near the back of the group. Same sector as the Henderson incident? Tyler asked, his voice lower than before. Yeah, Brian replied, and something in his tone made Vexthal pay closer attention. Let's make sure this one goes better. Vexthal moved closer. What was the Henderson incident? The two humans went quiet for a moment. Jake, who'd apparently heard the question, answered without turning around. Merchant ship. The Reavers got there before we did. 43 civilians aboard. Did you avenge them? Vexthal asked, expecting tales of honorable retribution. We solved the problem, Jake said simply. His voice had gone flat again, emotionless. Made sure that particular Reaver cell won't hurt anyone else. There was something in those words that sent a chill through Vexthal's exoskeleton. Not anger or bloodlust or pride. Something colder. Something final. They boarded the patrol vessel, a sleek craft designed for long-range operations. The interior was cramped by Kryn standards but efficiently laid out. Every surface served multiple purposes. Every system was accessible for quick repairs. It was practical in a way that Kryn ships weren't. Kryn vessels were designed to intimidate, to project power. This human ship was designed to work. As they settled in for the 6-hour journey to the patrol sector, the humans returned to their casual behavior. David pulled out a datapad and started reading something. Amy was showing Rebecca pictures of what appeared to be a small human infant. My niece, she explained when she caught Vexthal looking. 3 months old. Isn't she beautiful? Vexthal had no frame of reference for judging human infant attractiveness, but he nodded politely. Brian and Tyler resumed their sports debate with renewed energy. Jake sat down with a physical book, actual paper pages, and began reading. The title was something about ancient Earth history. They seemed completely unconcerned about the potential danger ahead. The Talvek Reavers were ruthless killers, and these humans were discussing babies and sports like they were on vacation. Vexthal had fought in 17 campaigns across the Kryn Empire's borders. He'd led charges against fortified positions. He'd dueled enemy champions in single combat. He'd earned medals for valor that covered half his chest plate. Every one of those battles had been preceded by hours of mental preparation, meditation, ritual combat exercises. These humans treated warfare like an inconvenient chore, something to be handled between family calls and recreational reading. He settled into his seat, disappointment settling in his chest like a stone. He'd hoped to learn something from these humans, to understand what made them worthy of galactic respect. Instead, he was spending time with what appeared to be the least martial culture he'd ever encountered. 6 hours into the patrol, the sensor console beeped softly. Lieutenant Rebecca looked at her screen, her relaxed posture not changing at all. Got something here. Distress beacon, Sector 9. Signature matches a Valtorian cargo hauler. Could be legitimate, Amy said. But Vexthal noticed she was already moving toward her weapons station. Her movements were smooth, practiced, like she'd done this 1,000 times before. Could be, Jake agreed. His voice had changed. The warmth was gone, replaced by something flat and neutral. Battle stations. Quiet protocols. What happened next made Vexthal sit up straighter in his seat. The transformation was instant and complete. 1 second the humans were relaxed and casual. The next they were different people entirely. The jokes stopped mid-sentence. The smiles vanished like someone had flipped a switch. Brian closed his book and set it aside with careful precision. Tyler's hands were already flying across his console, bringing weapons systems online. David's fingers danced over the sensor array, his eyes narrowed in concentration. They moved to their stations with perfect efficiency. No wasted motion. No unnecessary words. No bumping into each other or calling out positions. They simply flowed into place like water finding its level. Commander, suggest you strap in and stay behind cover, Rebecca said. Her voice was different now too. Crisp. Professional. Empty of emotion. If this goes loud, it'll happen fast. I am a Kryn warrior, Vexthal replied, his pride rising. I have faced worse odds than a single distressed freighter. I do not need to hide behind cover like a frightened child. Rebecca didn't argue. She just nodded once and returned her attention to her console. But Vexthal noticed Jake glancing back at him, and there was something in those human eyes that hadn't been there before. Something cold and distant like looking into deep space. The patrol vessel approached the distressed freighter carefully. Vexthal could see it now on the main view screen. It was listing to one side, venting atmosphere from what looked like engine damage. Standard pirate bait. Use a damaged ship to lure in good Samaritans, then ambush them. It was a tactic older than space travel itself. Vexthal had seen it before. He'd fallen for it once himself, early in his career. He'd learned his lesson and never made that mistake again. Apparently, humans had learned the same lesson. Range to target 15,000 meters, David reported. Closing at 200 meters per second. Weapons hot, Amy added. Targeting solutions ready on 6 probable attack vectors. 6. Vexthal leaned forward, studying the tactical display. He could only identify 3 likely ambush positions. Where were the humans seeing the other 3? Slow to 150, Rebecca ordered. Tyler, cycle the shields. I want full power to forward and starboard. Why starboard? Vexthal asked. The freighter was directly ahead. Standard doctrine called for forward shields. Nobody answered him. They were too focused on their tasks. The patrol vessel crept closer. 12,000 meters. 10,000. 8,000. Then the freighter exploded. The detonation was massive, a brilliant flash that temporarily whited out the view screen. Debris blossomed outward in an expanding sphere of twisted metal and frozen atmosphere. And from behind that debris cloud, like predators emerging from tall grass, came the Reaver ships. Vexthal's combat computer counted them automatically. 12 gunships, each one bristling with weapons. Now wait. 15. More were emerging from the debris field, using the wreckage as cover exactly as the humans had predicted. Contact multiple hostiles. Amy's voice was sharp but completely calm. Not a hint of fear or excitement. Count 12, make that 15. No, 17. More emerging from the debris field. Plasma bolts hammered into their shields. The ship rocked and warning lights flashed across every console. Vexthal gripped his seat as the vessel shuddered under the impact. But the humans didn't react with panic or fear. They reacted like a machine switching into a new operating mode. Tyler, Brian, pattern Delta 7, Jake said. His voice was barely above a whisper now, so quiet that Vexthal had to strain to hear it. Amy, target their lead ship's engine signature. Wait for the drift. Dave, Rebecca, you're on suppression. Make them think twice about that flanking run. Copy, came 4 simultaneous responses, each voice as cold and empty as Jake's. Vexthal had commanded troops in battle before. He'd coordinated complex maneuvers across multiple fronts. He'd managed orbital bombardments and ground assaults. But he'd never heard coordination like this. There was no emotion in their voices at all. No excitement, no fear, no battle fury. Just information flowing between them like data streams. The patrol vessel rolled hard to port, and this time Vexthal was ready for it. But what amazed him was that the humans didn't stumble or grab for support. They moved with the ship, their bodies already compensating for the maneuver before it happened. Like they'd known it was coming. Amy's fingers flew across her targeting console. 3 solutions appeared on the tactical display, mathematical predictions of where the enemy ships would be in the next 5 seconds. She didn't fire at where they were. She fired at where they would be. Firing, she said, and pressed a single button. The ship's main cannon spoke once. A single lance of coherent energy crossed the distance in a fraction of a second. The lead Reaver gunship's engine exploded in a brilliant fireball. The ship went spinning out of control, tumbling directly into the path of 2 of its companions. The 3 vessels collided in a cascade of secondary explosions. 3 ships eliminated with 1 shot. Nice, Jake said. His tone held no pride, no satisfaction. He might as well have been commenting on the weather. Rotate shields forward to port. They're going to try the debris field. He was right. Vexthal watched as 5 Reaver ships dove into the wreckage of the merchant vessel, using the twisted metal as cover. It was a smart move. The debris would confuse sensors and provide protection from direct fire. Vexthal would have pursued them directly. Kryn doctrine taught that you pressed your advantage, drove the enemy before you, gave them no time to regroup. Hesitation in battle was death. The humans did something completely different. They're going to use the cargo containers for cover and try to board us, Rebecca said. She was pulling up a tactical analysis on her screen, overlaying probable attack patterns. Same method they used on the Henderson. Yeah, Jake confirmed. So we let them think it's working. Dave, kill our drive signature. Make it look like they clipped something important. Vexthal's eyes widened. You're pretending to be damaged? That's dishonorable. 5 sets of cold human eyes turned toward him. The temperature in the cabin seemed to drop several degrees. Jake spoke, his voice carrying no judgment but absolute certainty. Honor doesn't bring dead crews back to life, Commander. Winning does. Drive signature dropping, David reported, his hands already working his console. Auxiliary power fluctuating. They should read us as critically damaged. Reading the bait, Amy confirmed. 5 ships breaking from the debris field. They're forming up for a boarding run. Vexthal watched the tactical display in disbelief. The Reaver ships were repositioning, extending their boarding tubes, preparing to overwhelm what they thought was a crippled patrol vessel. They were falling for it completely. The human patrol vessel drifted, venting fake atmosphere, its engines silent. Every indicator screamed that it was helpless, waiting to be boarded and captured. The Reavers closed in. 100 meters. 75. 50. Wait for it, Rebecca whispered. 40 meters. Vexthal could see the pirates now, visible through the viewports of their ships. They looked excited, eager. They thought they'd won. 30 meters. Wait for it. 20 meters. The boarding tubes were extending. Now. Everything happened at once. The patrol vessel's damaged drives roared to full power in an instant. The ship spun on its central axis with a grace that seemed impossible for something that size. Every weapon system that had been offline came active simultaneously. At point-blank range with targets that had closed to boarding distance, the humans didn't miss. 4 Reaver ships simply ceased to exist, torn apart by concentrated fire at ranges where shields and armor meant nothing. The explosions lit up the view screen like small suns. But the remaining Reaver ships were already firing back. Plasma bolts and particle beams hammered into the patrol vessel's shields at distances measured in meters. Warning klaxons blared as the shield strength indicators dropped rapidly. Shield collapse in 15 seconds, Tyler reported. No panic in his voice. Just fact. Noted, Rebecca said. Amy, take out their weapons. Don't let them get a second volley. On it, Amy responded. Her hands moved across her console like she was playing a musical instrument. More shots. More explosions. But there were too many targets, too close, moving too fast. The shields collapsed with a sound like breaking glass. Alarms screamed through the cabin. Hull breach, Section 4, David announced. Atmospheric containment holding. We've got boarders. How many? Jake asked. Sensors show 15, maybe 20. Copy that. Jake stood, picking up his rifle with the same casual ease he'd used to pick up his book earlier. Brian, Tyler, you're with me. Amy, Rebecca, keep those remaining ships off us. Dave, seal sections 3 through 5. Don't let them spread out. He turned to Vexthal. Commander, you're welcome to join us, but stay behind and watch our backs. Not our methods. Before Vexthal could ask what that meant, the three humans were already moving. They flowed through the corridors of the ship like water, rifles up and ready, their movements synchronized without any visible communication. Vexthal grabbed his own plasma rifle and followed, his warrior's pride demanding he prove himself in combat. Finally, he would see what humans were really made of. Finally, there would be honorable battle. What he was about to witness would shatter every assumption he'd ever made about warfare, about honor, and about the nature of humanity itself. Because the humans weren't preparing for battle. They were preparing to solve a problem. And Vexthal was about to learn that when humans decided something was a problem, they were very, very good at making it go away. They reached Section 4 within minutes, moving through the corridors with practiced speed. Vexthal could hear the Reavers now. Their guttural war cries echoed through the metal walls, punctuated by the sharp crack of energy weapons discharging. He could smell the ozone from plasma fire, the acrid stench of melting metal. His combat instincts surged. This was it. Battle. Glory. The chance to prove Kryn's superiority. The humans went completely silent. It wasn't just quiet. It was absolute. They stopped talking, stopped making any sound at all. Even their breathing seemed to disappear. Jake held up one fist and Brian and Tyler froze instantly mid-step like statues. Then Jake's hand moved. Quick gestures, fingers forming shapes that Vexthal didn't recognize. Some kind of silent communication system. Brian nodded once. Tyler shifted his grip on his rifle. More hand signals flashed between them, too fast for Vexthal to follow or understand. Jake pointed to himself, then swept his hand forward in a cutting motion. He was going first. Alone. Into a corridor full of armed pirates. Vexthal wanted to object. In Kryn military tradition, commanders didn't lead the first charge. They coordinated from behind, directing their warriors, preserving their strategic value. Sending your leader into danger first was tactically foolish. But before Vexthal could speak, Jake slipped around the corner and disappeared. What happened next took maybe 3 seconds, but Vexthal would remember it for the rest of his life in perfect, crystalline detail. The sound of Jake's rifle. 3 shots so close together they almost sounded like one. But Vexthal's trained ear caught the slight differences in direction. 3 different targets. 3 different angles. Fired while moving. A Reaver's scream cut off mid-breath. The wet thump of a body hitting the deck. Something metallic clattered across the floor, spinning away from dead fingers. Then Jake's voice, still that same cold whisper. 2 left, Corridor B. Armed with plasma repeaters. Behind cover. How could he possibly know that? He'd been around the corner for 3 seconds. Brian and Tyler moved. No discussion, no confirmation needed. They simply went, flowing past Vexthal like smoke. They took flanking positions on opposite sides of the corridor entrance, weapons raised, bodies pressed against the walls. 2 more shots. Quick and precise. Then silence. Clear, Jake reported. He emerged from the corridor looking exactly the same as when he'd entered. His expression hadn't changed. His breathing was steady. He might as well have been checking storage inventory. Vexthal stared past him at the corridor beyond. 5 Reaver bodies lay scattered across the deck. Elite pirates, each one wearing combat armor, carrying military-grade weapons. The kind of fighters that gave even Kryn warriors pause. Defeated in 3 seconds by 3 humans who looked like they were going through a routine maintenance checklist. Tyler was already checking his datapad, scanning for life signs. 15 more signatures still on board. Splitting into 3 groups. Dave's got the sections sealed, Jake confirmed, listening to something on his comm unit. They'll have to come through the maintenance tunnels or double back to the breach point. Maintenance tunnels? Brian said. Not a question. A statement of fact. Yeah, Jake agreed. That's what we do. Let's set up at Junction 7. Crossfire position. Make them come to us on our terms. They moved again and Vexthal followed in a daze. His mind was struggling to process what he'd witnessed. The humans weren't fighting like warriors. They weren't seeking glorious combat or testing their skills against worthy opponents. They were hunting. Like predators who'd studied their prey's every behavior, every instinct, every probable response. Junction 7 was a T-intersection where 3 corridors met. The humans surveyed it for perhaps 5 seconds, then moved into positions that made Vexthal's tactical training sing with approval despite his shock. Overlapping fields of fire. Multiple layers of cover. Clear sight lines. Fallback routes already identified. All established in seconds without a single word spoken. "Commander," Jake said softly, "behind that support beam. Stay low. When this starts, it's going to be loud and fast." Vexthal moved to the position. His hands were shaking slightly as he gripped his rifle. For the first time in his entire military career, spanning decades of combat across multiple war zones, Vexthal felt something completely unfamiliar. Fear. Not of the Reavers. They were just pirates, brutal but predictable. No, what terrified Vexthal was the cold efficiency of the humans beside him. The absolute certainty in their movements. The complete absence of doubt or hesitation. These weren't soldiers. They were something else entirely. Minutes passed. The only sound was the distant hum of the ship's engines and the occasional crackle of damaged systems. The humans didn't fidget. Didn't shift positions. Didn't make small talk to pass the time. They simply waited, rifles trained on the maintenance tunnel entrance, patient as stones. Then Vexthal heard it. Boots on metal. Hushed voices speaking in the harsh Reaver tongue. They were coming. 8 Reavers emerged from the maintenance tunnel in a tight tactical formation. They were good, Vexthal had to admit. Moving with coordination, weapons sweeping in overlapping arcs, checking corners. These weren't random pirates. They were trained fighters. They never had a chance. Brian's first shot took out the lead Reaver's helmet light. The tunnel plunged into darkness. In the 2 seconds it took for the pirates to switch to night vision, Tyler had already eliminated 2 more with perfect headshots. The Reavers tried to return fire, but they were shooting at ghosts. The humans had already moved, flowing to new positions like they'd rehearsed this exact scenario 100 times. The pirates' shots hit empty walls and vacant shadows. Jake's rifle spoke in controlled bursts. 3-round groups, each one finding the weak points in Reaver armor. Neck seals. Arm joints. The gaps where chest plates connected. He wasn't just shooting at them. He was targeting specific vulnerabilities with surgical precision. Within 10 seconds, 6 Reavers were down. The remaining 2 tried to retreat back into the tunnel, scrambling over the bodies of their fallen companions. The humans didn't let them go. "Tyler, cut off the tunnel exit," Jake said, his voice still that eerie calm. "Don't let them regroup." "On it," Tyler responded. He was already moving, circling around through a side corridor that Vexthal hadn't even noticed was there. One of the fleeing Reavers turned, firing wildly behind him in pure panic. The plasma bolt went wide, hitting a power conduit. Sparks exploded across the junction, showering the area with molten metal fragments. The shower of sparks illuminated Vexthal's position, exposing him completely. The Reaver's 4 eyes locked onto the Kryn commander, and the pirate's weapon swung around with desperate speed. Vexthal tried to bring his own rifle up, but he knew he was too slow. His combat computer was already calculating the trajectory, already determining that the shot would hit him center mass. Fatal, even with his armor. Then Jake was there. The human sergeant moved faster than Vexthal would have thought possible. He threw himself between the commander and the Reaver, his body becoming a shield. Jake's rifle was firing before he even landed, 3 shots so close together they sounded like a single extended crack. The Reaver dropped, holes punched through his chest plate. Jake rolled to his feet without pause, immediately scanning for the next threat. His movements were smooth, practiced, efficient. Like this was something he did every day. "You okay, Commander?" Jake asked. He still wasn't looking at Vexthal. His eyes were on the corridor, watching for more enemies. Vexthal realized his mandibles were hanging open in shock. He closed them with effort. "You saved my life." "Yeah," Jake confirmed. Still watching the corridor. Still ready. "Try to stay behind cover. This isn't over yet." But it was how he said it that made Vexthal's blood run cold. There was no pride in Jake's voice. No satisfaction at saving an ally's life. No sense of accomplishment or honor earned. It was just another task completed, another item checked off a list, delivered in the same flat tone he might use to confirm he'd filed a report. Brian's voice crackled over the comm. "Got movement, Section 5. Last group is trying to circle back to their ship." "Cut them off," Rebecca ordered from the bridge. Don't let them report back to their fleet about our capabilities. Our capabilities? The words echoed in Vexthal's mind. He was beginning to understand what that really meant. The humans weren't just good at fighting. They were good at controlling information, managing threats, eliminating problems before those problems could spread. They thought 3 steps ahead always. Not just about winning the current fight but about preventing the next one. The humans moved through the ship again and Vexthal followed. But he wasn't a fellow warrior anymore. He was an observer watching something that both fascinated and terrified him. These humans had turned warfare into a science, stripped it of emotion and glory and honor, reduced it to pure mathematics of survival and victory. And they were devastatingly, horrifyingly good at it. They found the last group of Reavers in Section 5, trying to override the airlock controls to escape back to their boarding ship. 7 pirates, set up in a defensive position with portable barriers and heavy weapons. A strong position, well defended, with good sight lines. Jake assessed it for maybe 3 seconds. Then he started giving orders in that cold, quiet voice that Vexthal was learning to dread. And Vexthal realized something that shook him to his core. These humans weren't going to charge in seeking glory. They were going to dismantle this defensive position like engineers solving an equation. Systematically. Efficiently. Without mercy or hesitation. The Reavers were already dead. They just didn't know it yet. The battle for Section 5 lasted 30 seconds. Brian took position on an upper catwalk that Vexthal hadn't even noticed existed. He laid down suppressing fire, not trying to hit anyone but forcing the Reavers to keep their heads down behind their barriers. His shots were perfectly timed, perfectly placed, creating windows of opportunity. Tyler emerged from a maintenance shaft that somehow put him on the Reavers' left flank. An angle they hadn't defended because they probably didn't know that shaft was there. The humans knew their own ship like it was an extension of their bodies. And Jake simply walked forward. Not charging, not rushing. Just walking with his rifle up, firing in controlled bursts between Brian's suppressing shots. Each bullet found its mark. Each target went down. The Reavers fought back hard. Their heavy weapons tore chunks out of the walls. Molten metal sprayed across the deck. The air filled with smoke and the scream of overstressed shields. But they were fighting as individuals, each one trying to be the hero who stopped the humans. The humans fought like a single organism with 3 bodies. Each one knew exactly where the others were, what they were doing, what they would do next. There was no discussion, no coordination needed. They just moved together like parts of a machine. When it was over, one Reaver remained. Wounded, cowering behind his barrier, weapon thrown aside. Jake approached him with his rifle still raised and said something in a language Vexthal didn't recognize. The translator kicked in a moment later. Surrender or die. Choose now. The pirate dropped to the deck, hands on his head. Jake kept his rifle trained on the Reaver but didn't fire. His expression never changed. No anger at the enemy who'd tried to kill him. No satisfaction at victory. Nothing but cold professional focus. Hands on your head. Face down. Try anything and you're done. The pirate complied. Jake secured him with magnetic restraints, checking for concealed weapons with practiced efficiency. Through it all, his face remained blank. Empty. Like he'd done this 1,000 times before and expected to do it 1,000 more. Outside ships are breaking off. Amy's voice came through the comm, remaining Reaver vessels in full retreat. We have 1 prisoner, 0 friendly casualties. 0 friendly casualties. They've been ambushed by 15 ships, boarded by 20 armed pirates, fought running battles through their own corridors and nobody got hurt. Nobody even got scratched. Vexthal had led cringe strike teams that would have considered 50% losses acceptable for this kind of fight. The journey back to Aurora 7 took 8 hours. During that time, Vexthal watched another transformation. The humans shifted back into the friendly, casual people he'd met that morning. It was like flipping a switch again but in reverse this time. Brian and Tyler resumed their argument about football teams within minutes of securing the ship. They debated player statistics and coaching decisions with the same intensity they'd used to coordinate kill zones. Amy was showing pictures of her niece to David, cooing over the images like the battle had never happened. And Jake was sitting across from the Reaver prisoner, teaching him a card game. Vexthal stood in the doorway watching in complete disbelief. The human sergeant who'd killed 5 pirates with clinical efficiency was now patiently explaining the rules of something called poker to his captive enemy. See, the goal is to make the best hand you can with the cards you're dealt, Jake said, his tone exactly the same as when he'd been calling out tactical positions. Patient, clear, matter of fact. But you can also bluff. Make other players think you've got better cards than you actually do. The Reaver, whose name was apparently Grecanel, stared at the cards with his 4 eyes. Why would I play a game based on lies? Because it's fun, Jake said simply. And because reading people is useful. You learn a lot about someone by watching how they bluff. Vexthal approached slowly, still unsure of his place among these strange beings. Sergeant Morrison. May I ask you something? Sure thing, Commander. Pull up a seat. Want to join the next hand? No, I just... Vexthal sat, his massive frame making the human-sized chair groan. How long have you been a soldier? Jake didn't look up from dealing cards. Joined at 18. 10 years now, give or take. And you've seen combat before today? Yeah. Few times. Amy called from across the room without looking up from her datapad. He's being modest. Jake's got 3 combat deployment ribbons and a silver star. That's one of our highest medals for bravery. Vexthal leaned forward. What conflicts have you fought in? Jake shrugged, still focused on the cards. Couple of small wars in the outer colonies. The Centauri Uprising. Did a tour on Kepler 442b during the corporate security situation. Some anti-piracy operations in the Typhon sector. Standard rotation stuff. Vexthal's translator struggled with some of the references, but he recognized the Centauri Uprising. The Galactic Council had sent observers to that conflict. The reports had been classified, but rumors spoke of 30,000 dead in 8 months of brutal fighting. The Centauri Uprising, Vexthal said carefully. That was humans fighting humans, wasn't it? Yeah, Jake confirmed. His voice got quieter. Colonists wanted independence. Earth government wanted to keep the territories. Nobody really wanted to fight, but neither side would back down. Ugly situation all around. You fought against your own species? Your own people? For the first time, real emotion flickered across Jake's face. Something sad and distant and old. Orders are orders. Somebody had to end it before more people died. We did what we could to keep casualties down, but... He trailed off, then forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. War's never clean, Commander. That's why we avoid it when we can. Grecanel made a sound that might have been a laugh. You don't fight like people who avoid war. You fight like people born to it. Like it's in your blood. Jake's smile disappeared. He looked at the Reaver with those cold eyes again. Yeah. That's exactly the problem. Silence fell across the table. The weight of those words hung in the air like smoke. Finally, Tyler called out from across the room, breaking the tension. Jake, you gonna brood all day or teach our new friend how to lose at poker? Jake dealt the next hand and the moment passed. But Vexthal couldn't let it go. His mind was racing, trying to understand what he'd witnessed. How many wars has humanity fought? He asked quietly. Amy answered from her spot, still not looking up. Against ourselves or other species? The casual way she asked the question made Vexthal's skin crawl. Like it was normal to have fought so many wars you needed to categorize them. Both. Against other species, maybe 15 conflicts since we joined the galactic community 70 years ago. Mostly peacekeeping stuff or anti-piracy like today. Amy scrolled through something on her datapad. Against ourselves? Recorded history shows about 3,000 years of pretty much constant warfare. Best guess is around 15,000 separate conflicts. Maybe more. History gets fuzzy the further back you go. 15,000? Vexthal felt his mandibles click involuntarily. That's not possible. It's conservative actually, Brian said, not looking up from the equipment he was cleaning. Doesn't count all the small stuff. Border skirmishes, tribal conflicts, that kind of thing. Just the major wars we have records of. Vexthal's mind reeled. The Kryn Empire had fought 40 wars in their entire history. Each one was commemorated with monuments, celebrated in songs, taught in schools as defining moments of their culture. Humans had fought 15,000 and discussed them like weather patterns. But why? Vexthal asked. Why so much fighting? Jake set down his cards and looked at Vexthal directly. Really looked at him, with eyes that had seen things the Kryn commander couldn't imagine. Because we're really good at disagreeing with each other, Commander. Religion, resources, land, politics, ideology, revenge. You name it, we've fought wars over it. Sometimes for good reasons. Sometimes for incredibly stupid ones. We spent most of our existence perfecting the art of killing each other. Until we got good enough at it that we scared ourselves, Rebecca added from where she was reading. Took a few weapons that could wipe out whole continents and some near-extinction events, but we eventually figured out that cooperation beats annihilation. Vexthal tried to process this information. Every tactic he'd seen today, every maneuver, every cold calculated move. So everything you did today, every strategy, every trick, refined over thousands of years of humans fighting humans, Jake confirmed. Every move we know we learned because someone used it against us first. Every weapon we built to counter weapons designed to kill us. We've been in an arms race with ourselves since we figured out how to throw rocks. That's horrifying, Vexthal whispered. Yeah, Jake agreed softly. It really is. The Reaver prisoner spoke up, his voice harsh. Then why fight for them? He gestured at Vexthal with his bound hands. Why protect aliens? If you're so good at war, why not conquer everyone? Jake was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but carried absolute conviction. Because we learned something important from all those wars. Conquest doesn't last. Every empire falls eventually, usually taking millions of innocent people with it. The only way to really win is making sure everyone gets a voice. Tyler laughed from across the room. Plush trading is way more profitable than conquering. Hard to sell someone your products after you've bombed their house. Despite everything, Vexthal felt himself relax slightly. These humans were terrifying warriors, yes. But they'd chosen a different path. They'd looked at their own capacity for violence and decided to build something better instead. That might be the most impressive thing about them. Commander Vexthal sat alone in the small conference room, staring at a blank screen. His hands hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly. In 40 years of military service, he'd written hundreds of reports. Battle assessments, tactical analyses, casualty summaries. Words had always come easily to him. Not this time. How could he explain what he'd witnessed? How could he make the Strategic Council understand without sounding like he'd lost his mind? The Kryn valued glory in combat, honor in battle, strength demonstrated through direct confrontation. Everything he'd seen today violated those principles. And yet, the humans had been devastatingly effective. He started typing, deleted it, started again. The words felt inadequate, too small to contain the truth. After an hour of false starts, he settled on a simple title. Reassessment, Human Combat Doctrine and Strategic Implications. His hands were still shaking. He wrote carefully, choosing each word with precision. The Strategic Council needed to understand this wasn't panic or exaggeration. This was cold analysis from a veteran commander who'd seen something that changed everything he thought he knew about warfare. The report took shape slowly. He described the ambush, the boarding action, the clinical efficiency of human combat operations. But more importantly, he described what it meant. The implications. Humans didn't fight like the Kryn fought. They didn't fight like any species Vexthal had encountered. They turned warfare into engineering, stripped it of emotion and glory, reduced it to pure problem-solving. And they'd gotten so terrifyingly good at it that violence had become just another tool in their kit. Not special, not sacred. Just practical. His primary recommendation made him feel like a coward, but he wrote it anyway. Under no circumstances should the Kryn Empire enter into military conflict with humanity. He stared at those words for a long time. They felt like a betrayal of everything he'd been taught. Kryn warriors didn't back down from challenges. They didn't avoid fights out of fear. But this wasn't about fear. This was about survival. About recognizing a predator when you saw one. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Come in. Jake entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. The same friendly smile was back on his face, like the cold-eyed killer from earlier had never existed. Figured you might need a refill. We'll be docking in about 30 minutes. Mind if I sit? Please. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both watching Aurora 7 grow larger through the small window. The space station glittered against the darkness, tiny ships moving around it like insects around a light. You're writing about what happened today, aren't you? Jake asked. Vexthal saw no point in lying. Yes. My superiors will want a complete assessment. What are you going to tell them? That was the question, wasn't it? Vexthal considered lying, offering some diplomatic non-answer. But these humans had saved his life today. They deserved honesty. That the Kryn Empire should pursue deep alliance with humanity. Not because we fear you, but because... He paused, searching for the right words. Because you're the kind of people we want on our side, not against us. Jake nodded slowly. Fair enough. Can I tell you something, Commander? Off the record. Of course. We don't want to be the scary ones. Jake's voice was quiet, almost sad. Every human I know would rather never fight again. We've seen what war does. We've lived through it for thousands of years. The cost, the trauma, the waste. We're good at fighting because we've had to be, not because we want to be. Then why maintain such effective military forces? Vexthal asked. Why train so hard if you want peace? Jake smiled, but it was a tired smile. Because the galaxy's a dangerous place and hoping for peace doesn't make it happen. We learned that the hard way over and over. So we stay ready, stay sharp, stay capable. But that doesn't mean we like it. You switched so easily though, Vexthal said. From friendly to lethal and back again. Like flipping a switch. Yeah. We call it compartmentalization. It's how we cope. Jake took a sip of his coffee. If we carried the violence with us all the time, it would destroy us. So we learned to put it in a box. Open it when needed, close it when we're done. It's not perfect, but it keeps us sane. Vexthal thought about that. The Kryn celebrated their battles, relived them in stories and songs. They kept the glory alive. But maybe that only worked when you fought 40 wars across centuries. When you'd fought 15,000, maybe you had to forget just to keep moving forward. The prisoner, Vexthal said. Grecanale. You're treating him with kindness. He surrendered. That means he gets treated according to the rules. Jake shrugged. Besides, scared prisoners don't give good intelligence. Comfortable ones do. And maybe, just maybe, treating him like a person instead of a monster means he'll think twice before joining another pirate crew. You're trying to rehabilitate him? We're trying to break the cycle, Jake corrected. Pirates recruit from desperate people with no options. Give them options, give them hope, and maybe they choose something else. It's a long game, but it's worked before. Everything about humans was long-term thinking, Vexthal realized. They didn't just win battles. They thought about what came after the battles, how to prevent the next war, how to build something lasting. It was strategic thinking on a scale the Kryn had never considered. Your species terrifies me, Vexthal admitted. But I think I'm beginning to understand why the galaxy respects you. Because we're dangerous? Jake asked. Because you're dangerous and you choose not to be. Vexthal gestured at the window at the peaceful station ahead. Any species can be destructive. It takes something special to be capable of great violence and choose great kindness instead. Jake was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. Thanks, Commander. That means a lot, actually. Most species just see the weapons and the tactics. They don't see the choice behind it. The ship's intercom crackled. Docking in 10 minutes. All personnel prepare for station transfer. Jake stood, extending his hand. It's been an honor serving with you, Commander. Despite the circumstances. Vexthal clasped the human's hand carefully. The honor is mine, Sergeant. Truly. Back on Aurora 7, Vexthal transmitted his report to Kryn High Command with a personal flag marking it urgent. Then he went to the observation deck to watch the stars and think. Other species moved around him. Voltorians discussing trade routes. Centauri couples enjoying the view. A group of Palaxian students laughing about something. All going about their lives in peace because humans and others like them kept the space lanes safe. Jake found him there an hour later. Hey, Commander. We're having a small gathering in the mess hall. Nothing fancy, just the crew unwinding. You'd be welcome to join us. Vexthal almost declined. He had more reports to write, more analysis to complete. But something made him pause. These humans had shown him their lethal side. Maybe he should see more of their peaceful one. I would like that, he said. The mess hall was crowded and loud. Off-duty personnel from a dozen different species filled the tables, eating and drinking and talking. The humans from Jake's unit had claimed a corner table. They waved Vexthal over enthusiastically. Commander. Come try actual Earth food, not that packaged stuff from the patrol vessel, Amy said, pushing a plate toward him. This is pizza. It's practically a religious experience. Tyler was already arguing with Brian again, this time about something called baseball. Rebecca was showing David pictures from her last vacation to Earth. Normal, peaceful, boring conversation. And Vexthal realized something profound. This was what humans fought for. Not glory or conquest or dominance. They fought for this. For the right to sit around tables with friends, arguing about meaningless things, sharing food and stories and laughter. They'd turned themselves into the galaxy's most effective warriors so they could have peaceful, boring lives. Commander, you okay? Jake asked. You look like you're thinking hard about something. I am, Vexthal admitted. I'm thinking that I came here expecting to learn about human military capability. But I've learned something much more important. What's that? That strength means nothing without wisdom. That the most dangerous people are often the kindest. That humanity's greatest weapon isn't your tactics or technology. Vexthal looked around the table at these strange, wonderful, terrifying beings. It's that you can be the deadliest thing in the galaxy and still choose to be good. Jake raised his glass. I'll drink to that. To choosing to be better than our worst instincts. To being better, the others echoed, raising their own drinks. Vexthal raised his glass of water and joined the toast. And for the first time since the battle, he felt his fear transform into something else. Not quite friendship, not yet. But respect. Deep, genuine respect for a species that had looked into the abyss of their own violent nature and decided to build bridges instead of weapons. Well, they built weapons too. Lots of weapons. But they built the bridges first. 3 weeks later, Vexthal received a response from Kryn High Command. His report had caused quite a stir. Emergency council sessions. Strategic reassessments. Policy debates. The final decision was unanimous. The Kryn Empire would pursue formal alliance with humanity. Not as a defensive measure against human aggression, but as partnership with people who understood both the necessity and the cost of peace. Vexthal smiled as he read the orders. Sometimes the bravest thing a warrior could do wasn't charging into battle. Sometimes it was recognizing when you'd met someone who'd already walked that path and learned its lessons. Humanity had discovered real terror in their own capacity for violence. And they'd chosen to become something better anyway. That, Vexthal thought, was true courage. The kind worth learning from.